Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar about how to win bigger deals, sponsored by Prolific.ai. And I'm Andy Paul. I'm going to be moderating this discussion today. Joining me are Eddie Hansen, who's CEO of Prolific.ai, and my friend Ian Koniak, who is, gosh, if you pay attention to LinkedIn at all today, or at all recently, he's all over it. So Ian, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here. Good to see you, Eddie.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about how to win bigger deals in B2B sales using an account planning strategy, build relationships with key decision makers to help you and your team win big deals consistently. So let's just do a few introductions first. Eddie, if you could give us a little bit of information about yourself.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for kicking us off today, Andy. Hello, everybody. Nice to see everyone. My name is Eddie Hansen. I have the great opportunity to lead our team here at Prolific. I formerly, before Prolific, was a 6-year seller at Salesforce. So I got to witness firsthand the legend and Ian Koniak and the stories about which ties back to the topic of today's conversation, which is how to win bigger deals, which really excites me. And the specific topic around winning big deals is really what Prolific focuses on, is how do you provide better structure, engagement, interaction specific to account planning within the walls of Salesforce. So really excited to hear what Andy and Ian have to say today around their stories of how they've won big deals, strategies, and how they approach their key customers and key prospects. And hopefully I can provide some good insights as well. So thanks everyone for joining. Looking forward to the conversation today, guys.
All right. And Ian,
thanks
some background on you.
Sure. Ian Koniak, I'm president and founder of my own coaching business, and I kind of followed Eddie's footsteps. I was a seller at Salesforce, and interestingly enough, one of the first calls I made was to Andy to find out what it was like to be an entrepreneur. And I made that leap about a year ago. Been running my business full time, and I get to coach and train sales professionals and speak to companies around how to teach really strategic selling and enterprise selling, and help people really follow the path that worked really well for me, at Salesforce. So great to be here. Great.
And yeah, I'm Andy Paul, author, podcast host of Sales Enablement with Andy Paul, author of a new book just came out, Sell Without Selling Out, that many of you received as registering for this webinar. And I too have a sales consulting business, and I've been doing that for about 22 years now. So anyway, excited to get into it today, and we've got a bunch of people have joined us, so let's jump into it.
Great book, by the way. I finished it. For anyone on here, pick it up. If you didn't get the free copy, get it anyway. It's fantastic for any seller.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Why is it not? All right, there we go. So this is being recorded, and you will receive the recording via email. Please ask your questions. We have people monitoring the chat box for your questions coming in. We're also going to run a few polls during this, and we don't have to say it, but keep it professional. So what we're going to cover is we're going to start with why do you need to do account planning when you're looking at big opportunities. We'll talk about how to build an account strategy, get into understanding key stakeholders and making sure you're multi-threaded in your approach to the account. We'll talk about building relationships with key stakeholders, and for those that also manage existing accounts, it's how to grow the strategic accounts that you own. So our first poll question, we're going to lead off with one. How are you doing account planning today? So you can select all or make a choice. There we go. Oh, it says we can't vote.
We're not allowed. We're cut off.
Bummer.
Oh, man.
All right, has everyone had a chance to vote? If so, Lene, we'll move on to the next. Here we go. Oh, here's our, sorry, we had to wait for our responses first. Here we go. Google Docs, 34%, internal collaboration, QBRs, meetings, 48%, PowerPoint, 28%, Salesforce 35%, and using account planning software today. Eddie, I see a lot of opportunity for you here. It is 10% using. Any comments on that before we jump ahead? Eddie?
I'll make one comment. Is I'm not surprised at all by the poll. I've experienced that while at Salesforce, at other selling organizations where Prolific wants to change the narrative, is looking at account planning as a task and pulling you out of your CRM to do account planning. If you're doing account planning, that's a win in itself. But if you can create better structure around it, that's always a win. And leveraging your internal CRM data to help you do so is just going to make you more efficient. It's going to spread the knowledge across your organization. But I'm just happy to see that people are participating in account planning today, and hopefully we can talk about some best practices, no matter how you're doing account planning current state.
Yeah, well, I think that we addressed the first bullet there with the poll results, is what the current state of account planning is. But let's sort of dive into it. I think Ian, maybe lead off is just define what an account plan is.
Yeah. So for anyone who knows my background, I was what you would call a strategic account director at Salesforce. So I was responsible for the largest enterprise accounts, the strategic accounts, and I managed not just my own book of business, but an extended team. So think about Tableau or MuleSoft or Slack or all of these other sellers within an account. Ultimately, I got revenue credit when they were selling. So we used an account plan as a way. The way I think about it and define it is a central place where we can all march to the same direction. We could all align around the customer's strategic goals, objectives, vision, and I can make sure that we're not all doing different things and basically frustrating the customer and not communicating with each other. So it's the glue that holds the account together in service of the customer's most ambitious goals that you're trying to help them achieve. So
when do you do that account plan?
For us, I mean, there's a couple places, but it's a one-time exercise in the beginning of the year when you're actually creating the original account plan. So when I say creating original account plan, we'll get into what does that entail in a little bit, but there's going to be some legwork in the beginning where we understand what does the customer care about and who are the executives, what are we doing today in the account, who's the team, all of the foundational work that's usually done in, typically in the Salesforce, it's done in February at the beginning of the fiscal year. But really where account planning is used successfully is when it's an ongoing iteration of the original strategy, because fundamentally the direction is going to change. Things are going to change within the account, within your team. And so you need to do it effectively, be looking at the account plan every single week. So I did the original account plan with the team. That was kind of a half day exercise, but then weekly, we're making sure that whatever we document and whatever we actually want to achieve in the account is actually getting executed on an ongoing basis, and that the people are on the extended team are doing what they need to achieve the goals that we have in his account team.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think that one of the biggest pieces of account planning for this group that's listening, it needs to be a consistent mindset. To where I think today, then a lot of times the narrative around account planning is it's looked at as a task that I need to check the box to appease the higher ups in the account team. We're going to go into our quarterly business review or to kick off the year. We're all going to present. We're going to enjoy the day. We're going to go have drinks afterwards. But that PowerPoint often gets forgotten about. And that excitement often gets forgotten about. And the best reps that I've seen do exactly what Ian was talking about. It's consistently looking at the account plan. Are we managing to all of our strategic objectives? Am I bringing in the team collectively as a group to provide action items for everybody across our internal selling organization to get to the theme of this entire webinar, which is how do we close big deals and how do we consistently close deals within the accounts that we're working on? Because it's an evolution throughout the year, throughout the multiple years that you're going to be managing that account. And as Ian said, things can change very, very quickly. But if you keep the momentum going, if you continue to get multi-threaded, if you can shift your strategy throughout the year, that's where opportunities are going to come up. And that's how you turn a seed and grow deal into a very large account for you throughout the remainder of the year. So very, very important to stay consistent and continue to manage to it, and not look at it as a one-time event or a quarterly event across
Sure.
the team.
Well, what about for new opportunities, that aren't existing accounts?
Yeah.
Talk about account planning in that perspective.
Absolutely. So I look at an account plan in three different capacities. So it can start with a prospecting plan. We've identified that there is a potential deal with this client. They're within our ICP. I can see it. We have a great customer story within their industry, et cetera. So we call those prospecting plans here at Prolific. That prospecting plan should be the plan throughout the duration of the customer lifecycle once you secure that initial deal and that opportunity. And it's important to align with the relevant stakeholders that are tied to that opportunity, but also be thinking about the future growth of that prospect.
Mm-hmm.
If you land that deal and then say, okay, my hands are clean, I've won a customer, that's where a $10,000 deal could turn into a $200,000 deal throughout the remainder of the year if you do the account plan right through opportunity plans, the handoff, bringing in the team from a CS, from an account management perspective to help you grow that account once you land that initial customer.
Okay. Ian, anything else?
Yeah, I look at it as white space, right? So there's a couple areas. If you don't, this is so important. I used to hate account planning. I'll be very, very clear. Before we started doing it in the way that, both Eddie and I are describing, which is actually very valuable and useful to grow your business, I did the PowerPoint thing once a year, huge exercise, and then never looked at it. And that's just not effective. It's a waste of everyone's time. So the way that it's very, very effective in terms of opportunity management is at the beginning of the year, if you could identify where is the white space in the account, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I say white space, what you'll see is a lot of times, you might have 5% of the total addressable market in an account covered by what you have with that initial deal or whatever the footprint is, especially if it's Salesforce where you might have a lot of products. But it's not just what other products could the companies use, it's what departments are not using us today,
right.
What other subsidiaries, sister companies. If you don't take the time to even map out the account and see all the places that you could go sell into and who are the people that run those different places and companies and departments, like once you do that, it's the old 80-20 rule, right? You can have 80% of your revenue coming from 20% of your clients, the Pareto principle. And we truly believe that. And I believe that when I had a list of 20 accounts at Salesforce in my first few years, like I was very, very thinly spread. But
right.
Every year as Salesforce grew, the account list got smaller and smaller. And everyone else was like, oh, they're taking away my territory and complaining and all this rubbish. And for me, it's interesting because the smaller my account list got, the better I did because
Absolutely.
I can go high, wide, and deep in those accounts
right.
and
Absolutely.
truly be in all areas. And it's just amazing how much growth potential every account has. So it really starts with identifying what are the opportunities we can go after, who are the people that we need to speak to in those opportunities, and then what is the extended team going to do so that I can scale and put my team to work and cover all areas within the account. If you don't have an account plan, good luck doing that. It's not going to happen.
Okay, so 2 questions have come in already. We'll just address here. One from Lyle saying, when we are saying big deals, what size, either dollar size or ARR, are we defining as big?
I don't think there is a definition or a set number when it comes to big deals. There's different segments across every organization. There's different verticals that you're going to be working with. As an SMB rep at Salesforce, a big deal was $15,000, $25,000. That could retire almost half of your quota. And those accounts still need focus. You might not have the amount of personas and the amount of people that you're driving that relationship with. But for
Right.
an SMB client, a $25,000 spend is a big investment when it comes to technology.
Right.
So I think it just varies across which segment you're in. And it depends on your quota attainment month over month and what your quota is month over month. If it's going to take 15, 25% of your quota for that month or that quarter, I'd consider it a very, very large deal, an important deal for you to execute an account plan against.
Ian.
I define big deals. I mean, everyone's got a different definition. If you talk to Jamal Raymer, he'll say a big deal is a mega deal and it's $50 million, right? For me, it's not so much the deal size. It's more about the strategic selling motion that you need to go through. So, fundamentally in enterprise sales, we were talking about quotas of north of $2 million, right? So if I was selling a $20,000 deal, I'd have to sell 100 deals to get to quota, which is not feasible. So I was really targeting deals, at least probably where you see the strategic selling motion kick in is when multiple stakeholders are needed for approval, when there's a lot of different people in the decision, chain and a lot of different political opinions and, different, motivations and needing multi-threading. That's where I feel like, those deals are big in nature. And typically that happens usually when you're north of, I'd say $500,000, maybe $250,000 for the large enterprise. Because anything below, departments can approve it, which has less bureaucracy and they don't have to go to all the other departments. So I think north of 250, at least for me, I would probably think of as a big deal, but really 7 figures and above, is what I did a lot of at Salesforce.
Yeah, I agree. And that was, for me, that was sort of the benchmark. If it was over 7 figures, that was a big deal. Another question from Mike to Ian, recommendations on where to find, in terms of account planning, where to find an org structure other than a 10K or a financial report of some sort.
There's a few places to find it. I think LinkedIn Sales Navigator is the best in my opinion, because it gives you a lot of the notifications of when new people are coming in. I don't know in terms of like the deep org chart functionality, but in a lot of the paid tools, specifically at Salesforce, we had used Hoovers, which became Dun & Bradstreet, have that baked in where you can actually see the org structure and hierarchy. The phone numbers might be out of date. You don't know 100% with the data, but you can validate that in LinkedIn basically and cross-reference the two. And then Zoom Info is another great source for, seeing the executives, but definitely get one of those paid tools to be able to see who are the executives. They're all paid for a reason because they're giving you accurate data and they're giving you insights into the account that you can't get from a 10K. So that's what I would look to.
Okay. Last question on this is from Nigel is how much research or /time account or account planning is too much?
You want to take that, Eddie?
Well, I'm excited to hear your response as well, but the research up front is really important for the reason of coming in with a point of view. If you're never going to close a big deal if you don't come in with a point of view. So reading a 10K, doing your research on Zoom Info, whatever data source that you're leveraging, it's really important to understand from a contact perspective, what's their background, where have they worked in the past, and what's the value that I can bring to this particular persona. From a company perspective, you need to align your point of view from a contact to and how that's going to tie into the company strategy that's either publicly available or that you've uncovered through discovery across all of your stakeholders. Where it becomes too much and where I've coached sellers in the past is if it stops you from picking up the phone and having real conversations. Having conversations is the most important thing that you can do. And that's the best research that you can get from an organization is by talking to people. So if you're spending all of your time researching and not spending your time prospecting, finding ways to get multi-threaded and to have those conversations, that's where I think it can become somewhat of a hindrance.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I'm thinking of a Mike Tyson quote right now. It's like all your plans go out the window when you get punched in the face.
Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it really like, look, there's the reality and then there's the reality, right? Where I see most sales reps, a lot of sales reps, not most, but many fail is when they don't take action to Eddie's point, right? When they're planning and they're getting all these team meetings and, you're just doing war room calls and strategy sessions. Nothing happens until there's an active opportunity and you have a conversation with the customer. So account planning is too much when basically you're not taking action. Action is what will inform the account plan. When you actually have a conversation and see what's going on in the account, where they're struggling and get with the executives and hear what they're focused on, like that's where fundamentally I didn't want to spend too much time on account planning up front unless it was a very big account, right? Because we need to have the strategy. So I would only do this for 1 or 2 accounts. I wouldn't do it for all my accounts because it's a waste of time until we know that, fundamentally that there's opportunities in the accounts, and we only know that we're talking to the customers. So that's I kind of echo what
it's not unknown for sellers to sort of hide behind the planning process.
Yeah.
Right.
And I see that all the time.
We're not quite ready. We're not quite ready. Yeah.
We're debating something. We haven't even talked to the customer.
Right.
It's like everyone, too many cooks in the kitchen. And we would do these account plans where it was like 20 people. I'd have 20 people in a big conference room, and we'd all be giving our perspectives and our point of views. And it's like, okay, great. Let's go validate with the customer. You talk to this person, you go to talk to this person. It's all about action. I mean, that's what sales in a nutshell is. It's like, let's get in front of the customers. Let's focus on revenue generating activities. So I would say too much is when you're spending days not working because you're in a conference room with your internal team. That's not where we should put our time and effort.
Yeah. So. It's important to keep in mind. It's never done. Right. So, yeah. Okay. Let's move on. We have some more questions. We'll get to them as we go along. Building an account plan, talk about which accounts require an account plan. We sort of addressed that a little bit, but why don't we talk about that?
Yeah, I think we briefly chatted about it, but part of the account planning process is identifying which accounts you need to create account plans for. Ian alluded to this. Not every account deserves an account plan because it takes time, effort, resources, actions against those plans. So if you're a rep that has a mixture of current customers and prospects that you're going to be hunting, it's really, I always look for the white space. Ian alluded to this earlier. Mm-hmm. I looked for the smallest spend accounts that I had large employee counts, that had multiple divisions that we could sell into. If we only had one product and we're a vendor, those are the simplest customers to target to go find that white space to. And also companies that you have great relationships with. You maybe closed a deal with 1 or 2 stakeholders within that organization that loves you, but that company doesn't know who you are or what your company can solve for holistically. Right. So I looked at it very much so relationship based and where the white space is across this account that we are a vendor in currently.
Okay. So how do you differentiate an account strategy from an account plan?
I think we have to differentiate between a current customer and a new logo to start for this to make a lot of sense. Because if you think about an account strategy, your prospecting strategy for a new logo is going to be very different than from a current account. For example, from a current account, it's who are our champions, who are our advocates, where do we have relationships, where don't we, who's using the product, who's not, how can we leverage, it's going to look very, very different. In fact, the tools that Salesforce uses for account planning were very much, okay, what are they using? How much are they spending? When are contracts coming up? None of that would apply with a new logo. So when I think about account strategy, right, it's always going to be the same thing. With a new logo, is how do we break into the account at the C-suite or at least at a strategic level to address and solve some of the biggest challenges that we identify in our research, and how can we go to the lower levels to validate those challenges even exist and get information, so when we go up to the C-suite, it's not just a hypothesis. And I call this approach yo-yo selling. It's starting at the top, going down, validating, going back up, going back down. And it's very much a work in progress, but it's all in pursuit of a very large deal. Whereas with a current account, the strategy might be go after the white space. We might have a huge footprint in one product, but not in another product. Right. So how can we get in better with IT? How can we get in with the COO's office, right? So it really does depend on what are the goals with an account. Because if you have an account spending $20 million a year, like I had in managing its Salesforce, I mean, that's an army of people already in there, right? And so the account planning becomes, okay,
multiple products,
how do we make sure we understand what everyone's doing in the account and where their goals are, and how do we align this to the executive so we can actually become a trusted advisor and get a seat at the table where, frankly, right now we're still viewed as a vendor. How do we up level how we're seen in the account? So it really does depend, but ultimately the strategy is how do you position yourself and become a trusted advisor, where the plan, it looks very different for a current versus a new logo.
Okay. I'm going to dig into another question here from William. He said he's trying to figure out the pace of the selling motion per account once you've built out an account plan. So if you have more than several dozen accounts to manage, how do you plan the pace of cycling in new accounts for your outreach?
Yeah, it's a really good question.
Yeah.
If you have 12 account plans, I think I'd go back to, okay, let's identify our top 3 to 5 accounts that we have had good relationships with. We know that there's something here. You need to focus where the revenue is. And in the background, there can be lighter account plans to where you're just doing the blocking and tackling of getting multi-threaded. Those are more of your prospecting account plans to where you're building that relationship to funnel into that top 3, that top 5 account plans that you're getting all of the table stake information. Who do they sell to? How do they make money? Like that's information that's required for each and every account plan. Where an account plan gets focus is as that relationship builds. As we move blockers to supporters to champions, and you start to get really strong sentiment across the organization, which gives you license to hunt to grow that account through different business units, through multiple products that you can sell, et cetera.
Okay.
I agree. I agree. It's less is more. You can't do this motion with 24 accounts. You're going to have to pick. Yeah, 3 to 5 is a great number, I think, to work with. But fundamentally, I mean, if you're going to manage to an account plan, you're going to need to hold the team accountable. You're going to make sure you need to have the account plan doesn't just have the strategy. It's got, here's what the current status is. Here's the open opportunities. Let's talk about those. Here's what we're going to go after, which we still haven't penetrated. Let's adapt our messaging to the CMO where we're not working with already. But it's essentially, the way that you manage the speed and the cadence is through a weekly team meeting, right? And you're only going to do weekly team meetings for a couple accounts because otherwise,
you have more time, right?
Yeah, you don't have more time. So I only did it with 2 accounts. I had weekly team meetings, and the other ones I didn't. So go for the place where there's the highest potential, but it starts with segmenting your accounts. I segment them into A, B, and C, and the A's were very small. It was only 10, 20% of the whole account list until the account list got really small. And I didn't have to segment anymore. But even then, you want to segment into the right departments or divisions or companies within those accounts. If they're very large, if you're managing 24 enterprises, you're going to be thinly spread. So you pick your 20% of those, pick your 5 accounts and go all in on those. And the other ones, let your team go, let your junior AE or your BDR or other people kind of get in there. Where you focus, there is power. And when you focus, your success magnifies. So you have to pick your few focus areas so you can go all in with those accounts. That's
such a good point. I
agree
think
100%. Yeah.
The last comment that I'll make is I love this question. As Ian was talking, I was thinking about this. One of the most important skill sets that you can develop as a rep is when to know to walk away from an account as well, because your time is so valuable as a seller. You need to be focusing your time that's going to help you retire quota. So there's instances to where you've identified your top 5 accounts that you want to build out account plans for at the beginning of the year. Maybe that company purchased one of your competitors, et cetera. You don't need to stick to that account plan just to stick to that account plan because you chose it at the beginning of the year. Walk away and go find your money elsewhere in some instances.
Right. And I think the other perspective to look at is from the buyer's perspective. If you're a mile wide and an inch deep, your interactions with the buyer will be very unsatisfactory to them, right? You're not helping them get where they need to go. Exactly. So you're not doing them a favor and you risk burning the account.
It's the difference between transactional sales and strategic sales.
Yep.
It's the bottom line. Strategic, you're focused on fewer, but bigger opportunities at the executive level. Transactional, you're chasing smaller deals at the department level. And this is a strategic motion.
And the strategic, you're making the decision that even before you know what those specific opportunities are within the account, that they exist at some place, right? So you're making a bet to some degree, but it's an informed decision based on the information you have at hand. All right, just dig another question off the list right now. Let's say from Sunit. When growing a customer account, how do you navigate beyond key stakeholders? Often they can be passive to our expansion plans.
So I'm in the process of working with Ian on some training he's doing for our team, and I loved hearing your approach around this specific topic, Ian. I'd love to hear what you have to say.
key stakeholders are constantly, you have to remember, a lot of these accounts we're doing account plans for have 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 employees. This typically is for larger enterprises where this motion occurs, right? Even at Salesforce, the SMB team wasn't doing account plans, and it was a different planning process than in the strategic space. And so when I did my account plan most recently, it was a company called Experian. We identified over 150 VPs and executives that we could go after. And we broke that down to the top 50. And they were across different divisions, and they were heads of products, and there was IT exec. Just in IT, there was 15 executives that carried the VP and CIO. So when we think about multiple stakeholders, if we map out within the account plan, who have we actually talked to? Who knows us? The process about going through LinkedIn Navigator and looking at every single person that could be director and above is mind-boggling, because you'll get a huge list. And when you'll see, you're only probably in 10%, 15% of those, maybe if you're lucky, but usually you're single-threaded and there's a couple people that have a relationship, even for a big account that spends a lot of money. So I think just identifying where are we actually, where are we engaged at all, and where are we not, is a very eye-opening experience, because then you could spend the whole year trying to get meetings and connecting with people that you're not engaged with already. So that's how you do it, is you lay out the whole lay of the land in the areas that you want to go after. I do 3 levels deep. So I do C-suite level, right? Who is the COO, for example, and then you might have a VP or under the VPs, VP of operations, VP of planning, VP of the center of excellence, and then below that might be senior director of operations. And when you start going this 3 level, like director, senior director, VP, and C, you'll see within, and then you multiply that by 10 departments, right? IT, marketing, sales, service, operations, finance. You're like, it's mind-boggling. So that's really the exercise to go through, is like, see where you have relationships, and then have your team go after different parts of the stakeholders. So I had my marketing cloud AE responsible for the CMO relationship in that whole department. I had my BDR calling into senior directors. I was going after the C-suite. So it's really about understanding where are the relationships, where are they not, and then having your team and activating your team to go after the areas, because you can't scale by yourself. You have to do it as a team.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point. I think the best way that I've seen success in expediting that process to build those executive relationships is to really walk through the relationship mapping exercise with your coach, with your champion. That's one, validating that they're willing to go to bat for you. They're willing to share information. They're willing to provide those introductions. But it can also save you time. If somebody that has a title at that company really isn't a decision maker, or they're not going to be involved in an evaluation, you can get them off of that relationship map very quickly. So having that session, I think, number one, it helps build credibility with you and with your coach. But 2, you're going to gain so much more information by just walking through that type of session, the relationship mapping and org charting session, with the prospect or with the customer.
Okay. Great questions. And I'm glad we get a chance to answer them. We may not get all of our slides, but that's fine. So poll 2, relationship mapping. Are you building relationship maps and tracking influence and support? And would you like to see Prolific's relationship mapping tool? That's a yes. Everyone wants to see that. That's a yes. Eddie, come on.
Shameless plug at the end there. I like it.
Yeah, I like the poll. I like the poll question. good lead source, right? It's awesome.
All right. Has everybody voted? Can we move on? Let's see. Do we have results? Oh, there they are. Are you building relationship maps and tracking influence and support? Ooh. Yes is only 47%. And of course, everybody wants to see your tool, Eddie. Perfect. I like it. We've got the number of people actually responding to the poll sort of mirrors like our voting patterns in our general elections. This is about half the people do it. All right. Understanding who to engage with. So understanding who typically is involved in your sales cycle, document and map out 1 to 2 teams involved that have pain, look at pre-existing relationships in the account, identify your change agents and mobilizers, and leveraging your internal war room. So let's talk about the last one first. Tell us about your internal war room, Ian, when you were at Salesforce.
Man, those war room calls. I don't know if we need to change the name.
Yeah, well,
The
probably. But
war room calls. They're very valuable for the right accounts. I think fundamentally, you can't have a big deal go through unless you have all the stakeholders on board. And a lot of times you'll have concerns coming from people that were not involved in the large purchase and we're not using it. For example, maybe security concerns, or the CFO has concerns that are outside. So I think, one of the things that we did a lot at Salesforce is we would map and do executive mapping to the folks that fundamentally had any concerns. For example, a CFO that we hadn't engaged with, we got them to talk to our CFO about, planning and how to, allocate the cash flow and OpEx versus CapEx, or things that fundamentally were coming up, so that it's all about finding the subject matter expert within your organization that can address whatever concerns are arising after you understand. So the first step would be identify who are the key stakeholders, because on average, I think it's between 5 and 6 with companies over 1,000. The latest research from Challenger, I think, is 5.4 decision makers
I think it's in double digits now for buying committees. But yeah,
it just keeps growing. Whatever. I mean, depending on the company size, it can be even more. But the point is, there's a lot of people, and if you just have one champion, right, and that champion's trying to do all the selling, you're in trouble, right? You need to have direct line with whoever the key stakeholders are. So sometimes it's you that should make that outreach, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's one of your executives. I remember a big deal I was working on where they had product concerns. The main executive that was putting up the objection was on the board of Microsoft. So we had to get Brett Taylor, who was the next in line, COO at Salesforce, very high up, to talk about the product roadmap and the partnership with Microsoft and how it wasn't an either or thing. And it was a very thought out kind of strategy. And even to get Brett Taylor, there was a lot of internal politicking and planning to get access for that one conversation. So, fundamentally, it is really about identifying where are the objections, where are the concerns, and who are the best people to connect with the client to address those concerns, and what's the messaging to set up that meeting. That's kind of where I looked at the war room sessions as very impactful, is to bring in the team and make sure we're putting the right people, because it takes a village. I mean, it really does for these large deals.
Yeah. I think you're
before you get going, Eddie, but let's talk about it, because not everybody on the call on the webinar is, works for large organizations like Salesforce. Some may be working for startups that are trying to sell big deals, and they can't mobilize a huge team. It's basically all hands on deck within the organization itself, perhaps. Give sort of that perspective. If you're a smaller company and you've got potential strategic account at an enterprise level that you want to sell to, you can. How do you do it differently, or what do you do differently?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. I mean,
sure.
Prolific is a smaller company. We deal with that and deal with big clients every single day. But every single person internally at an organization has a role, and that role internally at the organization is going to align with one of those people that are part of the buying committee. That could be 5 people, that could be 10 people, that could be 15 people. So how I would like to how I'd like to visualize that is, I put all of my stakeholders sitting around a boardroom, and I put all of our internal stakeholders looking at a boardroom as well. And I like to map out who's going to be on point for any technical questions. Are we going to have executive alignment with our CEO and their CEO? Who's going to handle the day-to-day prospecting with lower levels and potential end users of our applications? And just because you're a smaller team and you don't have a team of 50 to 100 people supporting you, you can still get really strong alignment with the people that you have sitting in seat at a smaller company with each and every big deal that you're working with. And the key to that, in my opinion, is account planning internally as well. you really need to earn the right at a small company to get a CEOs, a VPs of sales mind share and time, because they're actively wearing so many hats across the organization. So I'd rather spend my time with somebody that's coming to me with a strong point of view, have shown that they've done account planning, have shown that they've taken action against those account plans, to bring in the correct people across the organization. So your internal organization and building out that account plan and coming into an internal war room with a point of view is really going to help you get the resources internally that you need to help you sell.
Well, also it gets you the attention at the customer level too, right? So that point of view, if you're a smaller enterprise, smaller company selling into the enterprise, that point of view, almost everything revolves around that. That's how you capture their attention.
You're the quarterback. If you want to get people on your team, big or small company, you need to come in with a vision. You need to come in with specific ask of what you want them to do and why, and have a plan. And your team will rally around you if you have confidence in that plan.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Another question. This is from Jacob saying, when you're working on a strategy for new accounts, how long do you work on it until you walk away? In the case of not finding anything of value or having a conversation with anyone, they say time to disqualify.
Depends how big your account list is. When I started at Salesforce, I was given all new accounts, and it was a small list, and I couldn't walk away. I mean, literally, I had one account over $1 billion, and I sent 15 emails to a CIO. We still chat to this day. He's a friend, and after 15, he said, "Okay, come on in." We did a 20,000 license deal, and I got Rookie of the Year. So you can't walk away. But you got to, like, that needs to be the top, again, the A account. Don't walk away from your A accounts, because there are A accounts for a reason, right? Mm-hmm. BC, if they're not engaged and there's not really a potential, you got to pick your bets and keep going. It takes on average, I think eight, again, Andy might know better than me, but 8 outreach contacts to get someone to meet with you. So people give up at 2 or 3 and they walk away way too soon, in my opinion.
Yeah. Keep going. Yeah, I think it's actually, you hear the numbers anywhere from 8 to 19 required, depending on whose data you're looking at. But yeah, to your point, prioritize your accounts. If it's an A account, just keep going. Just keep going.
We'll get in eventually. I mean, we're being tested. We got to.
Yeah, the persistence is really important, because people give up, right? That's one of the things people don't realize from a competitive sales standpoint. If you're persistent, your competitors oftentimes lose focus, let's say, to be generous. Okay. Poll question 3, average number of people involved in your sales cycle. Let's look for more than 50% participation in the vote. All right, let's move on. We'll get the poll results here coming up, Pop. So building relationships with execs. Oh, look at that. We got more people. 3 to 6. 7+. Yeah. Not unreasonable. Oops, sorry. Who's running this slide? That must be me. Okay, sorry, people. Building relationships with execs. Really important to research the individual going in. I think this is, we just start there. Gartner put out a study. Others have had similar studies. Read a book recently, had this in as well. That roughly 80% of C-level execs say they find no value in their interactions with sellers. In large part because lack of preparation. They don't have anything of value to share with them. They didn't have a point of view, didn't have an argument that they're advocating for. So talk about the level of research that you do, Ian, before you go in.
Yeah, I probably do more than most. For me, I mean, Eddie and I just did a deal together, and I came in knowing his background, and we talked about being a founder, and I asked him for advice and input. It was very conversational, and so I came from Salesforce, and we build that rapport. And I think that general approach is what I try to take, is like, look at the person and understand their world, right? Where do they live? What, what are they posting online? What are they, have they been on any podcasts? I'll go and listen to their podcasts. I'll look at videos, especially if it's a C-suite executive at a big company or a senior executive. It doesn't have to be the C-suite. I'm going to pull and listen. I have one, I know we're going to wrap up soon, but one of the customers at the account I mentioned earlier was the chief customer officer. And I remember it was a Saturday and I was doing some work in the yard, and I didn't want to, would have loved to put on music, but instead I put on a podcast where she was a guest and talked about it was about goal setting. And she talked about actually battling cancer and how she approached her fight with cancer the same way she approaches her business, is one day at a time and focus on the goals, and we'll get through this. And it really resonated. It was very moving to me. And when I reached out to her, I said that. I said, this was super moving. I had struggled with health issues myself. I was going through some issues at the time. And I said, I just love your approach. And, I had just gotten into recovery. And so I was talking about the one day at a time and how it resonated with me. And within 20 minutes, she responded and said, let's meet. And it was on that level. So that human to human connection, that personal connection of really finding something, not BS, not surface level, but truly taking the time to find something that you can ask about, that you can inquire, and that you can connect with going in is very important, because then it breaks down the sales walls and makes you a person, and people ultimately want to work with other people. So for me, I do a lot to find that thing that really I can connect to and ask about going in.
Yeah, Eddie.
I love that. I know we're coming up on time, so I echo everything that Ian said. And obviously you need to stick out with executives that are getting 50 sales emails away. And the only way to stick out is to be yourself. That's the only way you're going to be comfortable having those regular human interactions, and being yourself is who executives want to talk to. They don't want to get pitched. They want a strong point of view from a human being. Yep. And get creative in your outreach. And that's how you do stick out.
Yeah. And some of you are getting a book that talks all about that. So look at that shameless plug. You're not the only one that can do the shameless plug.
Yes.
So.
And I love that you wrote that, because that's the whole book. It's be yourself and be a human. And I don't know other books like that. And that's the key to success. The top people are real, authentic, and they're not putting on a front in what you say, being salesy, right?
Right. Not being salesy, not playing the role of a salesperson, but actually being themselves. Yeah.
Right.
Well, we are bumping up against time here. So yeah, I think we've done a good job. And we'll respect people's time. Let's set them free. Ian, there's a bunch of questions, about 3 or 4 questions that we didn't get a chance to answer live. Can we get you to commit to answer those on email?
Yeah, if we want to do another recording to kind of go through, that's fine. Or just send me a direct message for the people who ask questions on LinkedIn, and I'll do my best to answer it.
Yeah, that's Melanie, John, Jack, and Kyle. And Jack again.
Yeah.
Oh, we got a bunch of questions came here right at the end. Gary, Chris, and Avinash. Chris, you can reach out to me with yours as well. Talking about the value of the humanistic approach to selling, which is what we've just been talking about. So yeah. People want to connect with you, Ian. Best way to do that?
LinkedIn is by far where I live, where I am. Send me a connect request. I'll get you my newsletter, my YouTube. And if you want to coach, untap your sales potential. There's my plug. It's open for a few more days until I close for the year. Live coaching. I think Carrie's in it. She's on this call. So untapyoursalespotential.com. Enrollment's open till Monday.
Got it. And Eddie, prolific.ai, but you're on LinkedIn, I take it as well?
Yep. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. Feel free to request some time with us through our website. And this was fun, guys. Thanks so much for the time and the great content from you both.
Yeah, well, thank you. And yeah, people are going to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm all over the place there as well. And love to connect and have a conversation with you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.